together. So just go to the page. Okay, so the 7th verse in Srimana Shiksha. Pratishtashtha Rishta Swapacharamani me Ridinate. Slight technical interlude here, so no worries. I'll wait till it comes on the screen.
It's kind of you, we can't do that. Oh, you didn't have to answer the remote? No?
My legs get weak, move around, you know.
How about a chair?
Are you sure?
Yeah, but get in the chair. You can see the wages. Nothing to sit on.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, so reading from verse 7 of Srimana Shiksha. Pratishtasha Prista Swapacharamani me Ridinate. Katam Sadhu Prema Sprisati Suchi Etam Nanumana. Katam Sadhu Prema Sprisati Suchi Etam Nanumana. Sadatvam Sevasva Prabhudayita Samanthamatulam. Sadatvam Sevasva Prabhudayita Samanthamatulam. Yatatam niskasya Twaritam ihatam vesayati saha. Okay, so just wait for the microphone. Okay. So, actually, before we do that, so just recollection. Any key points from the previous class? What do you recall? Yes, Dave. Sri Dave.
There are 3 kinds of devotees. Swaki is
Swanishta,
Parinishta, and Nirapeksha.
Yes.
First 2 are householders, the last is renunciate.
Perfect.
And then you delineated 6 ways, 2 ways, and 8 ways in which we can be deceitful.
Yes. And what's the essence of the deceit?
Huh?
What's the essence of the deceit? What's the main problem?
Material gain.
Yeah, it's other purposes other than devotion, pure devotion. Yeah, like that. So there's ulterior motives that's going on with those different practitioners. Anything else? Any other reflections? Okay, so that was the main one actually. Okay, so what we're going to do is we'll chant the word for word together. Drista, unchaste. Swapacha Ramani, dog-eating woman. Pratishtasa, desire for prestige. Naket, dances. Mehridi, in my heart. Katam, how can. Suchihi, pure. Sadhu Prema, chaste lady of love for Krishna. Sprishati, touch. Etan, this heart. Nanumanaha, O mind, Sadatwam, you should always, Sevasva, serve, Atulam, incomparable, Prabhu Dayita Samantam, beloved devotee, commander of the Lord's army. Yata, so that, Saha, he, the devotee commander, Tam Niskasya, throw her, the prostitute, out. Twaritam, immediately. Tam Vishayita, so Tam Vishayati, establish her prema. Iha, here, in the heart. Okay, translation. As long as the unchaste, dog-eating woman of desire for prestige dances in my heart, how can the chaste and pure lady of love for Krishna touch it? Therefore, O mind, you should always serve the incomparable, beloved devotee commander of Krishna's army, who will immediately throw out the unchaste woman and establish the pure lady of love in the heart. Okay. Just say quick form. Nagyantamarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Militamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasri Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, so carrying on in the Manashiksha. So this verse is directly dealing with this Pratishta, the desire for honor. It also includes the desire for fame, desire for prestige. All of these are different aspects of the same thing. And it's important to understand, Bhaktivinoda Thakur also explains, the Pratishta, it nourishes all the other forms of deceit. So you'll sometimes see that in the teaching, it will give the symptoms and then it will give the cause of those symptoms. So in the previous verse, when we were looking at all of these different things, what they had in common is seemingly an activity, but the purpose behind it isn't actually the purpose of the activity. So even in devotional service, real devotional service is not just the form, but it's actually the purpose, the intention behind it. And we hear this from day one, right? So we all know this very familiar verse. Anya Vilasita Shunyam Gyana Kalmad Navritamanokulina Krishna Nu Shilanam Bhakti Uttama. So Rupa Goswami, we're Rupa Nukas, he's already given the exact nature of devotional service. Right? It's an activity done for whose pleasure? Krishna's pleasure. Right? It's done favorably for Krishna's pleasure and it's free of something. Free of the desire for karma and jnana. So there's an actual formula that's given. And so what the previous verse that we looked at in the commentary, what they all had in common is that the activity isn't actually done favorably for Krishna's pleasure, and or it's got some other mixture in there, some other impurities. So now in this natural progression, we're hearing about why this is so important to give up and how we're going to do it as well. Why it's so important to give up is immediately stated. As long as the unchaste, dog-eating woman of desire for prestige dances in my heart, how can the chaste and pure lady of love for Krishna touch it? Okay? So in other words, it's an obstacle. And it's also considered to be not only that it nourishes all the other forms of deceit, but it's also considered to be the root of all the anarthas as well. But it has also this quality of being shameless, meaning that it's so subtle, it doesn't even recognize itself. So someone can have that desire. What we find in spiritual life, and I'm sure many of us had this experience, as we get purified, we're able to see inside ourselves more clearly. So there's something that we see which we thought was very, very good, and later on we realize, oh, hold on, this was mixed. I had this other desire there. Yeah. So the difficulty in spiritual life is that we're not fully conscious. We're not fully conscious of even what's behind what we do. So sometimes it requires association to actually point out, I know you think you're doing it for this reason, but actually there's something else there that you're not aware of. Yeah. I had that experience. I was in Germany, and the spiritual master, he just told me directly something else that was in the heart. We were just walking to my room or something like that. And he looked at me and he said that you have this other thing in your heart, that needs to also be noticed and worked on. So in the association, especially if we're in the association of advanced devotees, things that we're not conscious of, they can definitely see it. That's the first point. And if they feel the person's ready, they'll probably tell you as well. They may tell you, depending on what they feel the person can hear. So this is the why. And again, there's a logic to this. If this is there, the actual goal can't be attained. Okay? And that's important to give us impetus. Otherwise, you're trying to do something, but you're holding on to the exact thing which is going to stop you achieving the goal that you actually want to achieve. Like that. So there's a reason. This is why petition has to be given up. And so, as we said, it's the root of all the other anarthas, but it's hard to recognize because it's very subtle. Petition can be very, very subtle. So, in the commentary, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, fame is like dog flesh. It's very disgusting kind of, imagery. Fame is like dog flesh. One of the reasons why this is so unhealthy is it still attaches us to this idea that I'm the center of attention.
Or I should be.
And that we should. And it leads to these other negative behaviors as well. Because if I nourish this, it will lead to me thinking, feeling and acting in ways in the association of devotees which are unhealthy. That's it. Yes, do you want to pass the microphone, please?
Okay, I recognize that I shouldn't be trying to be the center of attention, so I take the position of being humble, so I can feel happy about how humble I am. That's another art.
Yes. Yeah. And what happened?
How do you get rid of that one?
Yeah. Well, there's a few things on that. One is that Krishna, even if we're acting humble, but we're doing it for an ulterior motive, because Krishna's in the heart, usually he gives us a bit of a slap. Yeah. Something will happen to show, and it's like something happens. And it's like, right now, how humble are you now? Right? You are being humble, which is meant to be that I'm not the center of attention, I'm just trying to serve, I've got no agenda. But then something happens to act by Krishna's grace, especially if we're lucky, to show us that what you were doing, it wasn't actually so humble. There was something else that was going on, there was something behind it. So, what can happen in spiritual life is that we can get a little kick when we go in the wrong direction. And it's to remind us, it's to get us to introspect and consider, this isn't quite working. What's wrong? So that's just one of the ways that Krishna can lovingly give us that understanding. But actually the better way is to learn by hearing, actually. The better way is to learn by hearing. It's a lot easier and a lot less painful to understand first and foremost by hearing. Because even what does humility mean? Prabhupada, there was a pastime when Prabhupada was asked about how to be humble, and he said, just be bold for Krishna. So the beauty of real Krishna consciousness is itself not a superficial activity. In of itself, it's not superficial. So the words have deep meaning. the behaviors have deep meaning, the characteristics of devotion have deep meaning. But we can also change the consciousness through the body. So, one devotee told Prabhupada, sometimes I don't feel like paying obeisances to you. Prabhupada told him, you should pay obeisances anyway, and eventually you'll feel like it. It's a different paradigm to this modern world. The modern world paradigm is I'll do something when I feel like it. But that's actually not healthy. Right? To give an example, imagine someone has a child and the child needs feeding, but you don't feel like feeding the child. The child will suffer. So above doing things just on the basis of feeling, is doing something because it's actually the right thing to do. It's actually, in our case, obviously, it's pleasing to Guru and Krishna. And we can develop that mentality. Would this be pleasing to my spiritual master? If so, it's something I may do. If it's not pleasing, it's something I would avoid. So yeah, this fame is like dog flesh. And those eager for that fame, that's actually what's being touched upon here. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, those who are eager for that fame are like dog eating promiscuous women. It's a very heavy, heavy thing to say. And if you see in this verse, that contrast between prema and pratishta, that's actually what's being shown here. So look at the way that he talks about it. As long as the unchaste, dog-eating, woman of desire for prestige dances in my heart, how can the chaste and pure lady of love of Krishna touch it? And touches are interesting because it means even go in that direction, touch it. There's something in the heart already, so how can the pure touch it? So this is what we're trying to relieve ourselves of. And of course, as we said, because we have so many layers to our consciousness, what we're trying to do is consciously cultivate the right mentality. It's very easy to even consciously cultivate the wrong mentality. Right? So it's easy to think, you know what, I want to have this pratishta, and it's okay. But here Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his commentary, and Raghunath Das Goswami is saying, no, don't cultivate that. Cultivate instead very, very pure intention. So, as long as, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, as long as desire for honour is there, deceit remains in the heart. So it will take the space that is meant to be taken up by love of Godhead. So the deceit will remain. And then he goes on to say something very, very interesting. He says, until we're free of deceit, we cannot get the pure love of saintly persons. Because that awakening of prema, it comes by the association of those who have it. So we have to create an environment internally which is receptive and suitable so that we can receive what those saintly devotees have to give. So Prabhupada, he has that prema. He comes into this world with that prema, and he's trying to distribute that. And he gives that to his followers to distribute, but we have to also be ready to receive. And this is how it works. So it's pointed out that when we're free of this desire for honor, then the whole heart becomes softened. So this is also very important. Self-centered desires make the heart hard. Yeah? And the implication is the relationships will also always have some kind of issue because of that self-centered desire. It gets in the way of us having proper sadhu sangha, and moreover, it gets in the way of us being fully able to receive what the sadhus have so we can have proper relationship with Krishna. Okay, so it blocks that.
What I'm going to say, I'm not sure. Well, what about astrological influences?
In what sense?
That influence one's way of thinking or consciousness, and which may move one towards one type of attitude or another at a certain time period in one's, life. I would, because I don't want to go into personal details, but anyway.
It's a great question. I was looking at this actually.
You were.
Yeah, because I was doing some research on this. I'll share a few things. Well, first of all, I asked my spiritual master something related to this. And I said that, because if you read carefully, you'll see some different statements about devotees, above karma. And at the same time, we also hear, what's that verse?
Where?
Lord Brahma. The thing who comes from should make Shema known, right? One who offers obeisances while suffering the reactions of their previous activities, for them liberation becomes their rightful inheritance. So I was trying to understand, how do these things work? So I asked him about them. He said to the extent that one is surrendered, to that extent they're above their material karma. So in other words, yeyatamam prapadyante, tam sateva bhajamiyaham, mama vadman vatati manusya pavasavajaham. So sometimes devotees think that I'm in the association of devotees and that's enough. There's my karma. Actually, interesting that devotees think that, but their good karma, what they think is their good karma, they want that part to stay. If they see my chart that I should become a millionaire, that Krishna, don't worry about that bit. That's good. I'll use that in service, of course. But the point is that yes, the swabhav. The swabhav is the material psychophysical nature, that doesn't change, but it does become purified. So to Maharaja's point, whatever our psychophysical nature is, if we engage that in Krishna's service, it actually becomes elevated and purified. So even if karmically we have a certain type of makeup or mentality, that's not a problem. The idea is that whatever we are, we're engaging that in Krishna's service. And by engaging whatever we are in Krishna's service, everything will be taken care of. It's not that you necessarily... So, for example, someone who's a big extrovert, they don't necessarily just become completely the opposite, but that extroversion will be completely used for Krishna's service. It's dedicated to the service of the Lord. That's the point. Yeah? So it's not that nature's changed, not true, but they become purified. Yeah? And that's why you'll see throughout Prabhupada's movement, so many great devotees, they don't become like each other, but they're fully pure versions of themselves in that sense. I hope that anyone else this or the further.
It is. I'm still considering the subtle aspects of it.
What's that? Is there lovely?
Well, it's hard to do without getting too personal.
Okay, maybe.
But yeah, what you say is right. Just consider it's not right. It's the main point. Try to use it in Krishna's service. If there's any negativity in that karmic influence, how to use that in Krishna's service also. So it all comes back all of using it in Krishna's service.
I have some experience in my own life. I kind of tried to study this a little bit more because I was fascinated by how this whole thing works. And what I've also seen is that it's amazing that the way that Krishna consciousness works in relation to your karma is that if you follow properly, then Krishna, so there's a term that's used sometimes, Krishna karma. And I remember there was a class by Shiva Maharaj who was explaining this. So let's say you've got a certain type of karma. There's different ways Krishna can deal with it. Sometimes he can give it to you anyway, because it's not unfavourable. But it's your karma, but he's now decided, I'm going to give that to you because it's good for you, it'll help you to move forward. That's one explanation, one situation that can happen. Another situation is something that you're meant to experience. He may actually take it away or minimize it because it's not required or it's better like this. Another situation is something you're meant to experience at one point in your life. He may give it to you at a different point in your life because it's better for you to receive that at that particular point. So there's so many different ways he can actually deal with it. What's really interesting is if you follow properly, especially with guidance, then what happens is you can also experience your karma from a position of strength. One example, there was, let's say one Prabhupada disciple, Prabhupada told him to put on weight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
because the girls would be chasing.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
Well, he was a sannyasi.
Yes.
He was very, he had all good qualities,
Yeah.
very attractive in so many ways.
Yeah.
So he told him, get a little fat and then you know, the girls won't be so excited. That's basically the purport.
Now I heard.
Don't mention the name, please.
Oh yeah, I'll mention. Now I heard that there was also an incident that happened later on after Prabhupada left, and that sannyasi was also attacked. I don't know if you remember that situation.
Yeah, that was in Spain.
I was in Spain. Okay, I didn't know where it was. But also, what happened was very interesting because he put on weight. That attack didn't actually cause him to die.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is so. In astrology, they talk sometimes about remedial measures, right, or remedies. But what we can understand is that if you follow properly, if you follow the instructions that are given, if you inquire as well, even something that you have to go through, you can go through it from a different position by following the instruction. So Krishna is very compassionate. So what he does is he will make arrangements. I've seen this in my own life. He will make arrangements for us to hear what we need to hear, so that even if we have to go through something, you'll be able to deal with it. You see? The process itself takes care of everything. I was speaking to one devotee astrologer, and she even mentioned to me, she said, when you do the morning program, it literally remedies all the planets. She explained that. So for example, so Nishingadev, he appears in the Mangala Vamsa. Mangala means Mars, the Mars dynasty. When you do Nishingadev prayers, that's taken care of. Guru Vandana, you know, prayers to the spiritual master. In astrology, the spiritual master is represented by Jupiter, right? Taken care of. So you'll find that actually by following, these other things are taken care of as well. And then whatever else we need to remedy and so on, in terms of something about the mentality, that gets purified. It gets purified over time, as Maharaj was saying, so we're engaging in that. So these things, the devotional process is so inclusive that so many other things that we're not aware of is taken care of. That's why sometimes you'll find that when people are following very strictly, it seems like everything's amazing, but if they stop following so well, then suddenly the same things which are there already, now there's less protection against them. So, just some thoughts on that.
What's the last thing you said?
Yeah, the more someone follows strictly, even things they have karmically, they don't bother them in the same way. But if they go outside of that, then suddenly it can become more troublesome. Yeah. Do you want to say, do you pass a...
Just one little thing. Regarding this Krishna karma that you were mentioning,
Yes.
it's like Krishna becomes like our personal coach.
Yes.
You know, he just gives us whatever we need to overcome or to pass the test.
Absolutely.
You know, whereas karma is from each action is an equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to get what you have to get.
Yeah.
But in Nectar of Devotion it says that once you chant Hare Krishna, you know, all your karma is removed. This is my understanding. And if all your karma is removed, so why we experiencing so many crazy things in life is because we still have the roots, the seed of our desire and our sins are there, but Krishna has to put some tests in order for us to understand that we have to learn the lesson. That's why he minimized it. If we have to get a leg cut off, probably we have some problem and we twist our ankle or something like that. As long as we understand the test, Krishna is happy. This is my...
Thank you. So adding on to that, there's also, to that point, as I was told by our Guru Maharaj, that there's also that level of your surrender. So it's also personal. We can take more shelter or less shelter of Krishna. That's the point. So, the more that we take shelter, the more that things will actually go very, very well for us in that sense. So it's a personal reciprocation. Otherwise, people think that I'm doing something. This other person who's actually more taking shelter, they're doing something. It should be the same. But actually, here to Mahaprabhu, Krishna is reciprocating. But thank you. This is definitely what you said is definitely true. And I love the point about the coach. Yeah, because what I think is really important because Krishna has a loving intention behind everything he does.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not. He wants us to come home. Prabhupada sometimes says he wants the living entity to come home more than we want to go back. So we have to cooperate with that.
He knows past, present, and future.
Yeah.
And he knows if you keep acting in the
Same way, this is going to happen. So he makes situations where you have to reconsider what you're doing based on his tests, which will change the future. And therefore, it'll be more devotional rather than falling into some kind of Maya. He sees that, he knows our future,
Yeah.
but because he knows our future, he also tries to change our future by giving us that mercy, that test, or whatever else is needed. That's his special care for his devotees. It's not that he knows the future and that's the way it's going to be, no. He knows it, but at the same time he also wants to improve it by helping us to come up to a better standard of devotional. Either his test, his mercy, whatever else comes by way of his adjustments. We call it his mercy, or we say whatever we call it, but it's all for our benefit. Everything, 100%.
So a story related to that, and that is, so there's a story of a king, and he gets a sword. It's a gift. It's very beautiful, very expensive sword. So one day the king is cleaning this sword, and he cuts his finger. He's in a lot of pain, bleeding. So he calls for his advisor, and he asks the advisor, so, I've been given this sword, I've been cleaning it, I've cut my finger, I'm in a lot of pain. He said, what's your understanding of this? And the advisor said to him, this is Krishna's mercy. And the king actually becomes angry. He says, you're saying that because it didn't happen to you. I'm in pain, I'm suffering, and this is all you can say, it's Krishna's mercy. So the king tells the guards, throw this impudent advisor, throw him in prison. He's very angry. So they throw the advisor in prison. And then later on that day, the king is going for a tour of his kingdom. And as he goes through the tour, he's actually going through a forest, and he's caught by some cannibals. They see him, they think it's prasadam time. So they give the king to the priest who's preparing him to make a human sacrifice. And at one point the priest says, stop. And he says, we have to let this person go. And the cannibals are asking, why do we have to let them go? He says, we can't use him in the sacrifice. Look at his hand. Part of his finger's missing. He's an imperfect specimen. We can't use him in the sacrifice. So the king, he becomes free. He runs back to the palace. And he realizes what the advisor told him. When he cut his finger, the advisor told him, my dear king, this is Krishna's mercy. So now he realizes that the advisor was very wise. So he tells the guards, please bring the advisor back. And the king apologizes. He says to the advisor, this is what happened. I was going through the forest, I was captured, they would have sacrificed me, but because I cut my finger, I was saved. So I'm sorry. I realized that what you were saying was actually true. This was Krishna's mercy. And the king says to him, he said, but I do have one question. He said, when you told me it was Krishna's mercy, I got angry and had you thrown in prison. So when I got caught by the cannibals and then let go, I understand that was Krishna's mercy on me. But when you told me it was Krishna's mercy, I got angry with you and had you thrown in prison. So I don't see how it's Krishna's mercy on you. So the advisor said to the king, he said, my dear king, he said, normally when you go on your tour of the kingdom, he said, normally I accompany you. So what actually would have happened is, had I accompanied you, they would have let you go and they would have sacrificed me instead. So, when you cut your finger, that was Krishna's mercy upon you. When I told you and you became angry with me and you had me thrown in prison, that was Krishna's mercy upon me. So oftentimes we don't necessarily understand in the moment the full reason why certain things are happening. However, if we have that faith, this is where faith is really important. It's important in all areas, but this especially. If we have that faith that as long as I'm acting properly, anything that happens, as Maharaja said, is ultimately taking us in the right direction, taking us towards Krishna.
Provided we understand it.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, we have to understand it.
Yeah.
It takes a little introspecting, sometimes advice from others. Why? How do I process what's happening in a way that I can understand as Christian person. Can't always see it.
Yeah. And this, so this is a great point. This is why association is important. And it's something that we should be cultivating all the time. We cultivate association. I have a view. Why is this happening? I think, again, I've seen so many situations, so many where, through advice, you see the situation differently. And it actually breeds faith. If you see it differently, you understand, oh wow. At the time, I didn't realize it, but looking back, this was actually very, very good. It's a real blessing. But in the situation, unless we have that guidance and also that introspection and also that faith that I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing, so yeah, the Christian's in charge. Yeah. Thank you very much.
This is really important. Really amazing.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. Otherwise, what happens is we will think that Krishna's getting in the way of our Krishna consciousness. Devotees think like that sometimes. I'm trying to serve sincerely. Krishna, what are you doing? Like, how are you, etc. But no, there's a higher purpose. I will also add one other thing. It is the case that we often have more difficulties in Krishna consciousness because we don't know how to apply the philosophy properly. So there will be some situations that we go through and it wasn't even something that we had to go through. It was due to unwise choices that were done. It's in 1st Canto, chapter 19, text number 12 in the purple. Prabhupada writes, you can read it in your own time, 1:19:12. He says, every major decision should be confirmed by some authority. To Maharaj's point.
Yeah, let's say Kanye as an example.
Yeah. And that makes it, and it's so beautiful. You see, even in the example of Prabhupada, you'll see if you really love Rita, sometimes Prabhupada's going to do something, he'll even speak to his disciples about it. He doesn't need to, he's a pure devotee, but he will also be the example like that, So we can take advantage of each other's association. This is what I'm thinking to do. Maharaj, what do you think? Or Prabhu, or Matthew, what do you think? And sometimes what will happen is they'll have an angle on things that we just haven't considered. But it requires us to take advantage of that association in that positive way. And that also requires humility. It requires humility, because without humility, I will feel that I know everything myself. And I won't understand, and I won't fully appreciate. These devotees who are around you, they may know something that you don't know that can genuinely help you to move forward. They may see some obstacle that you don't see, but they can see, I can see this is going to happen if you don't do this. So, it really is all about, and of course, then we evaluate it wisely according to Guru Sadhu Shastra. See, we're not talking about blind following. Not at all. Prabhupada says in the purple, 434 Bhagavad Gita, absurd inquiries and blind following says both things are condemned. They're not to be followed. So an intelligent following. I saw this letter recently, a few months ago. I think it's Prabhupada wrote to Bali Madan, and he says that you surrender with your intelligence, but you don't surrender your intelligence. Like that. So you actually practice Krishna consciousness using or offering your intelligence to Krishna by understanding Guru Sadhu Shastra and following properly. And that really helps us to move forward. And we'll read on a bit, because I know we should finish at 1. I want to give some time for questions. Okay, so this was really interesting. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he explains that pure devotees, because the way to overcome this very subtle desire for prestige, pratishta, it lies in the association of pure devotees. So in the verse, it says here, the incomparable beloved devotee commander of Krishna's army. Okay, pure devotees. And they said, what will they do? Who will immediately throw out the unchaste woman and establish a pure lady of love in the heart. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he touches upon this. The pure devotees, for those pure devotees, the rays of the Lord's internal potency are reflected in their heart. That internal potency is the Ladini Shakti. And that internal potency can accumulate in our heart. And then he explains how we can achieve or receive that potency. He says the flow of that potency can come from their embrace, the dust of their lotus feet, their remnants, and also their Vani, their instructions. So all of these are means by which we can receive that potency from them. I'll just read also one other thing here. This is... Yeah. So also, there's a quote here from the Padma Purana. So, Lord Shiva says in the Padma Purana, I'll just read the translation, of all kinds of worship, worship of Lord Vishnu is the best. But there's something, then he goes on to say something else. Recommended more than worship of Vishnu is worship of who?
Vaishnava.
The Vaishnava.
Oh, things in relationship to Vishnu.
Yes. Tadiya as well, yeah.
Tadiya.
Yeah. So all of these things are actually of extreme potency, auspicious quality. And because we're now looking at how we remove something that's very, very subtle, we need help. This was also established in the previous verse about crying out piteously. So in the previous verse, let's see, verse number 6, because it's a build in terms of the way the Manashiksha works. In verse number 6, let's see. Oh no, actually, it's a verse, I think it's a verse before that.
What are you looking for?
It's the statement where it says, cry out piteously for the devotees. Here it is, yeah, verse number 5. So it says, cry out piteously like this to the devotees of Sri Krishna, this destroyer of Baka. O mind, they will save you from these enemies. So in verse 5, it's talking about the 6 enemies of the mind. But this theme continues. What we're seeing is increasing dependence on the Vaishnavas. To remove even the most subtle traces or layers of obstacles from within the heart. Like that. So, this point is being made about this importance of devotee association. And as we said, this verse from Lord Shiva about the power of those, of worshipping the Lord's devotees as well. And the elements by which we can actually achieve that, that potency that they have. Okay? This is really, and of course, whether we get the remnants or other things, instruction is profuse. Yeah? Sometimes we don't understand the power of the instruction. The instruction is extremely powerful. And those instructions are something that we're meant to, that can be cultivated actually. The way you cultivate instructions is that you start to meditate on the instruction. You cultivate the instruction by thinking, right, this is what I was told to do. How am I going to achieve it? What are some plans? Because lust also resides in the intelligence. But through cultivating the instructions, we actually purify the intelligence, because now that intelligence is being used to engage in some activity which is going to take us closer to Krishna. Okay. So it's a cultivation that's meant to be going on. That Prabhupada will give his disciples so many instructions. And sometimes it'll be like, how are we going to do this? But that's good, because it absorbs them so much that it completely takes over that living into that devotee and completely engages them in that service. And in the process it's also purifying. And in the process they're getting that potency actually. They're receiving that mercy. So, as we said, Pratishta is the last enemy and the greatest obstacle. Right? The last enemy and the greatest obstacle in terms of us fully giving ourselves to Sri Radha and Krishna. And so there's also a mentality that we can cultivate that helps us to be free of this. So the mentality is, let's see, looking at my notes. Yeah, we want to really cultivate humility. The more we're able to cultivate the humility, it becomes like an antithesis. Okay? So against this desire for prestige and so on, we want to develop humility. And what happens? Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says that honor is an element of deceit. He said to the degree that we're free of the desire for honor, to that degree deceit leaves us. Okay? So there's one or the other. To the extent that we're not looking for honor, to that extent the deceitful tendencies actually leave us. And he says serving devotees induces humility. So there's a chain. First of all, we try to serve the devotees. As Maharaja said, we go to it with a mood of service. because we're trying to get rid of the fundamental issue, which is the desire to enjoy, which will still be there in a subtle way, even if we are in the association of devotees. So, by serving devotees, it induces humility. The serving mood and humility, they're the opposite, the antithesis of pride and the desire for honor. Okay? So serving mood and humility displaces the things that we don't want, which is pride and desire for honor. They actually neutralize and destroy those impurities. So when we serve the devotees, what happens? We invoke their compassion. So by trying to serve sincerely, it inspires compassion in the heart of the devotee. And when their compassion is invoked by us serving them, then their mercy flows towards us. So it's a scientific process. First, we try to serve them sincerely, right? Which means it's their agenda, not our agenda. We try to serve them sincerely. They feel compassion for us. They give their mercy. And in that giving of mercy, they transfer that Ladini Shakti from their heart into our heart. And it's that internal potency that comes by their compassion, by them being pleased, which purifies us and also generates or helps that love, that natural prema to come through. Okay, so this is why the association is so important. So the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord's devotees, their remnants and their instructions, all of them contain that Ladini Shakti, that internal potency, which then purifies of these pratishta, this very, very subtle issue that is in the heart. So, it's 10:02, so maybe we have time for questions. Yeah, okay. Yes, I saw a hand at the back.
I also have a question.
Okay. I'm sure by your question.
No, go ahead. Go that way.
Thank you, Prabhu. Again, lovely class. I love this social enterprise of we have to serve others and fill their glass. In order their glass to be full, someone will fill ours. And it'll be a happy world where we keep looking after each other and move forward. My only question is, how do we know if our glass is being filled with this Ladini Shakti?
You'll be progressing. There'll be progress. The whole point is, the whole process is by mercy, ultimately. We have to make an endeavor. The Dhammadarastikam, the pastime of, Mother Yashoda trying to bind Krishna. The Acharyas explain, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur explains that the rope was always two parts too short. One part indicates effort, the other part indicates mercy. In Bhagavad Gita, so there's Prabhupada gives the story of the sparrow who loses her eggs in the ocean. And he says it's an impossible mission. She actually asks the ocean, can you return my eggs? And the ocean's like, no. So she decides, I'm going to empty the ocean one big throw at a time. She can't do it, it's not possible. But her determination attracts the mercy of Garuda. Yeah, like that. So the point is that if we're making the endeavor properly, like that, because ultimately it's Radharani's mercy that we're coming forward, but her mercy is distributed amongst her devotees. So let me be very clear, because I wanted to just touch upon something that may be implied by the way you asked your question. It doesn't mean that you don't also fly your own plane. Okay? This idea of interacting and serving devotees, it doesn't mean that I'm serving the devotees and I'm neglecting myself. No, you're also cultivating your own devotion. So you're strong. But you're doing that also knowing that by chanting properly, I'm gaining spiritual strength. By reading properly, I'm gaining spiritual strength. By serving properly, I'm gaining spiritual strength. Yeah? So it's not that I'm neglecting myself and then the devotees will do something, will make me feel whole. I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing and I'm serving, which is also part of my because that's also part of my service. So that's why in the 5 potent forms of devotional service, Sadhu Sangha is there, but it's not the only one. Sadhu Sangha is there, then you have what? What's the other ones? Bhagavad Shravana, right? Nam Kirtan, right? So you have all these others. So hearing Bhagavatam, chanting the holy names of the Lord, association with devotees, residing in the holy places, Mathura Vas, right? And then the other one is Archana, engaging in deity worship. So to answer your question, so it's not, I'm not going to look after myself, and no, it's both and. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Oh, Marge.
I'm not trying to test you. I'm going to pose a scenario. Okay. This person, he wants honor. He wants that. Sometimes it's not obvious, but other times it is obvious. So he does things in a devotional way to get honor within the context of devotional service. Being known as a great devotee, being known as doing so many wonderful service. And then honor is coming. But then he realizes there's nothing to it. So he gets tired of it. He doesn't want it. He can see the fallacy of, the whole idea of getting honor is really just something cheap. It has no really value to the soul, to the devotional progress. So then he backs off. Rather than continue doing a lot of service, takes it easy. He says, well, honor is not really worth anything. I can see that. So now let me just relax, kick back, and so many other opportunities are coming for service. And he says, nah, no need for it. I'll just read and chant. So what kind of attitude is that?
Yeah, it's wrong. It's the wrong attitude.
What's wrong about it?
The point is that if we realize that the honor and prestige, there's nothing to it, that's true. That's completely favorable. That's in line with our Siddhanta. But it doesn't mean there's nothing to devotional service. We're still trying to serve to please Krishna.
Well, let me take it easy instead of doing as much as I used to do.
No, it doesn't work because the point is that you can't tread water in spiritual life. If one isn't advancing, actually Maya will catch up with the individual. And what tends to happen is the person may slow down or they may even become stuck at a certain level. So the point that I heard this in one class is that if we're running and then we slow down, it doesn't mean that Maya stops running. She's still catching, she's still behind us.
Well, my endeavors to get honor were much more than I really needed to do. I just did it for that prestige and for that. So now I can see there's nothing to it. So let me find another place that still is devotional, but at the same time, that desire for honor is no longer there.
That can be okay if it's under guidance, because then it means it's protected by the spiritual energy through Vani. Because there are situations where, let's say, a devotee is serving in the mode of passion. So they're over-endeavoring actually, and they're not going to be able to sustain it.
Right.
Okay, so then it means that they were off balance in the first place.
Right.
But now this situation is like, okay, now we're getting it in balance because it's confirmed by some authority, which means it's sustainable and it will be progressive.
So the motivation for rebalancing should not be because I didn't get the honor, but because it's actually in line with my progress.
Absolutely, yeah, because it's actually favorable.
Good point, thank you.
Thank you for the question. Yes, excellent.
Hare Krishna. You explained that we can receive the internal potency through the embrace, the dust of the lotus feet, the remnants of the instructions from the pure devotees.
Yes.
And then a little while later you talked about serving devotees as another way to invoke their compassion, and then the Ladini Shakti. So for that last point, are we talking about all devotees or are we talking about pure devotees?
I was talking about getting that mercy from... Yeah, actually, yes, that's a good question. So we were listening, Maharaja also listened to this when I was thinking, actually even before this, we were listening to a seminar. There's a really good seminar, Manashiksha, given by Solomon Shiva Ramaraj when he was he's still there actually, in Mayapur. I think it was towards the end of last year.
It was Kartik 2024.
Okay, yeah, Kartik 2024.
Kartik.
Yes, and so in that class, Maharaj actually makes a really interesting point. He says, all devotees have some prema, even the beginning devotee. It's just that it's in the minute scale. So when we say prema, what we mean by prema is when it's full blown. is fully there. But the beginning devotee, they actually have some degree of prema. That person who just began the process. So there's always benefit in serving them. You always get some benefit in serving them. Now, the purer they are, the more benefit. So it's not everything's, it's not all one. But in serving the devotees, Krishna's pleased. Yeah? And so it's also the cultivation of a mentality, actually. Because some devotees wrongly think, I'll serve Guru Maharaj very, very nicely, but I'll ignore everyone else. It doesn't work that way. Because the proper spiritual master wants you to behave properly with everyone. So in one sense, my spiritual master said that anyone who claims to be a genuine servant, who doesn't have genuine love for the devotees, is a genuine hypocrite. Yeah, like that. Because we're all one family, actually. You will find that in many cases you may have in some ways deeper connections with the devotees than you have for your own biological family. Because you share something very sacred together, something very eternal together, that others may not understand, like that. So it means we should serve all the devotees. And also bear in mind, it's not separate to serving the pure devotee. It's like Prabhupada. What did Prabhupada say? He said, you will show your love for me by how you associate and cooperate with each other. So in serving the devotees properly, you're actually pleasing him. You see? So it's not exclusive. Serving the pure devotee doesn't mean just a direct thing for them. It's actually the mood, it's the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. The letter of the law, here's some specific instructions. The spirit of the law is, how would that pure devotee want me to deal with everyone? How they want me to show up, how they want me to behave. So even if they haven't said, be nice to that new bhakta, but if you do it and you understand, what would Guru Maharaj want? Guru Maharaj would want me to deal with this person in a certain way. That's still serving them. And that will still attract their mercy, ultimately. Does that answer your question?
Sorry.
No, please.
It's just I like to steer, the nectar.
Yeah,
So
stir it. Please.
I want to listen from the senior devotees. But talking about Pratiska, we come across three very nice words, like compassion, one that you just talked like a few minutes ago, and also humility, and also is self-low esteem. Self-low esteem.
Low self-esteem.
Low self-esteem.
Yeah.
Sorry. Low self-esteem, which could be confused by high self-esteem. So, but Srila Swami, he used to say that low self-esteem and high self-esteem is also, me in the center. So low self-esteem is like you thinking, I should be there, but I'm here. Therefore, I'm very depressed. So I'm very humble. No, because I'm very bad and I'm horrible and I'm like warm on the stool or whatever. Because you think that you should be there, but you're here, and then you become depressed because of that, and it looks like you are humble.
Yes.
But actually, you have a low self-esteem.
Yes.
And humility, I like what you said about Prabhupada when he said, be bold for Krishna. And then I try to understand that and what it means to be bold for Krishna, because some of us that we are in a leadership position, how you become humble at the same time you are a Kshatriya type of guy, and sometimes you have to say things that have to be just, very heavy, but at the same time you have to show humility. And what I understood from this is my understanding, is being bold for Krishna is like you are very brave because you understand your dependence on the Lord. Okay? You know that you are completely dependent on Him, therefore you are backed up by the best. And because you are backed up by the best, you can move forward in a very aggressive, not violent, but in a very proactive way. That's the word, not aggressive. In a very proactive way to accomplish very, very nice things for the Lord. And so this is, and regarding compassion, and I give the mic, I'm sorry. And regarding compassion, is something interesting that this is something I study. I don't know if it's right. Maybe you can correct me. Compassion is something that you are, and mercy is something that you give. And I like how you put it, because compassion is you are in someone else's shoes. okay, and then you start to realize how that person is suffering or whatever that person is passing through. Therefore, because you know what that person is passing through, you want to help and assist that person in that situation. So you give mercy, because you already felt what he feels. Anyway, that's an idea. Maybe I'm just wrong. I'm sorry.
Thank you. The devotees param dukkha kripam buddhi. They feel the happiness and the suffering of other people. There are many examples of that with Prabhupada. And you would see, like, for example, people who are very old and they're just like playing golf or something like that, and he felt really had a lot of compassion for them, because he saw people who should be preparing to go back to the spiritual world.
Wasting their life.
Yeah, just wasting their life. And also because of that pure vision, he would know they're going to have to take birth again. They're going to have to suffer again and again. And they're not going to get out of this cycle until they actually take this opportunity. In regards to low self-esteem, see the difference? Yeah. So I asked Bhakti Maharaj about this. He said that as you said, there's two ways of playing God. One way is low self-esteem. Low self-esteem is a symptom of the mode of ignorance. That's how you can tell it's different from humility. With humility, one feels both insignificant because they understand how great Krishna is. But at the same time, because they're aware of Krishna's greatness, they feel humble. And also because they're aware of Krishna's greatness, they feel bold. So when there's real spiritual humility, one is active in service, enthusiastic in service. Because the same person who makes me feel, he's so amazing, who am I compared to him? But at the same time, he's so amazing that if I serve him, anything is possible. Like that. So the difference of humility is humility is symptomatic of the higher mode. If we're practicing devotees, it's symptomatic of goodness. If we're pure devotees, it's Shuddha-sattva. Like that. But low self-esteem is when someone feels so bad, I'm so fallen, and therefore they become inactive. I'm so fallen, my service never works out, no one likes my service, it will never work anyway, why even try? So you'll see the key thing is it will have symptoms of ignorance rather than symptoms of the progressive mode. So yeah, just elaborate. Thank you very much.
And humility is like, what you said, humility is like you know who you really are, comparing with God. So I'm small, because of course I'm small comparing with God. So you know where you are. Like Rupa Goswami said, because I know who I am, I have to be at the beginning of the line to get the mercy.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Shane. Marge, you pass the microphone.
All right.
I can't do it, so I won't do it. But in the essence, you can't do it anyway. Even if you try, it's not up to you. So that's the absolute principle, that we are dependent. Our efforts, as you mentioned, are the inspiration or the drive that brings Krishna's mercy, and that makes the activity successful. But if we think we can do it, or even think we have the intelligence to do it, then we are trapped in the false ego. And when it doesn't work out, then we get either morose or give up, or blame someone else for not having coming out the way it was. Yeah. So we can't do it. I mean, that's the whole thing. We are dependent. We're a jiva, tiny. So Prakriti Kriyamanani Gulikramani Sarvasya. Ahankara, yes, it's all about ahankara. That's low self-esteem.
So to Maharaj's point, which is a beautiful point, that the first in Maharaj quality says that the living entity, the world living entity, thinks himself to do with activities which are actually carried out by the three modes of material nature. So ultimately Krishna is the one who's doing it. And I remember you made the point when you gave a class earlier about the ability, Krishna is the ability in the person. So if we understand that actually our job is that we can endeavor, we can make the endeavor, but ultimately everything is Krishna's. And that's why in the Bhagavad Gita it talks about 5 factors of action. I have a colleague at work.
That's the point.
I have a colleague at work who's a business psychologist. And it's amazing what I'm finding again and again is there's all kinds of material research on things which is just not known publicly. See, he showed me the research, Because what they do is they do correlation research, which means that they look and see, let's say something was achieved by someone, and they look and see how much was it based upon their endeavor, how much was it based upon luck, and they found that they found generally luck plays the greatest role in how some things turn out. Luck. They call that, it's Daivam, it's Krishna's ultimate sanction. But there's material research. He showed me the article actually, and these are not devotees. There's actually research on it. Now, of course, there's a whole business industry which is built on convincing everyone that they are the doer. Because if you knew that there's other factor outside of your own endeavor, you wouldn't go on that course, and you wouldn't pay that money for that course. But there's loads of research that actually says this, and they found it to be true again and again. So to Maharaja's point, what we see in the Bhagavad Gita, that's also there in the research. Of course, they come to it through a different means, empirical means, but it's a fact. Yeah, and just to give an elaboration, and we should end for I think it's lunchtime. Even, let's say coming here. So we wanted to come here, we had to take the Eurostar, right? Those who are coming from London. If anything happens on that journey, we can't get here. When we get to the country, then we have to also go on the coach. If there's traffic in the way, if that engine breaks down, if they can't find the parts for the engine, we can't get there. Before you leave your house to endeavour, if something happens health-wise, your leg is paralysed or whatever it is, you can't even get out of the building. So it's not just an esoteric or philosophical point. For us to seemingly do anything, it relies on literally millions of other arrangements which are completely outside of our control. Millions of arrangements. Let's say we're in here. I'm speaking on this microphone. If the electrical system in this country goes down, this doesn't work. And it doesn't matter how much I play with the microphone. The lights. If the electrical system goes down, the light doesn't work. So we are always existing as an empirical, objective fact. We're always existing on factors outside of our control, and ultimately the source of all of that is Krishna. So when we say it's a doer, it's an empirical truth. You don't have to be religious or not religious. It's a logical fact of existence. And that's what he's also explaining through the pages of the Bhagavad Gita. Thank you, Marsh, for sharing that.
Nice summation. Thank you.
So I think we'll stop there. So I think it's time for the lunch. Okay. Don't make it to be upset with me. Okay, thank you very much. And when's the next class? I'll be the next.